What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.
Deathsquad, the podcast network created by Brian Redban. Initially was a nickname given to Joe Rogan and some of his friends like Tate Fletcher and Eddie Bravo, Sam Tripoli, just comedians and MMA fighters. I believe from Opie and Anthony anointed them the nickname of the Death Squad because Rogan would travel with him while he did his stand-up gigs back in the day. So that became kind of a nickname for Joe Rogan's audience. Later, Redban started a podcast network for a bunch of comedians out in LA and named it Deathsquad, since most of the comedians were also part of that original kind of definition of Deathsquad, one of which, Sam Tripoli, The Naughty Show, at the time, the longest running podcast on the network. But yeah, so I found out about it pretty early on. Was a huge fan of Rogan's podcast, and then Redban was a producer on that and mentioned that he was producing other podcasts. I was also a fan of watching shows live, which the Death Squad shows were one of the aspects of them was the ability to watch them live on Ustream, especially since the delay before they got released was pretty big at the time. So to stay up to date, watching them live on Ustream was kind of the way to go. So I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. I mean, in addition to the Naughty Show, the Skeptic Tank started on there. Ari Shaffir's Skeptic Tank, Tom Segura and Christina P's Your Mom's House started on there. The Bone Zone started on there with Randy Lickey and Brendan Walsh. Ice House Chronicles had some of the most epic lineups of comedians on there, from Dane Cook, Joe Rogan, Doug Benson, Bill Burr, like every single big comic. I mean, a lot of them a part of All Things Comedy. And then also Brody Stevens and Little Esther had a show for a little bit on there. The Ding Dong Show was a show that was part of the network at one time. And one of the few podcasts that's a mainstay for the network started out as the Hinchcliffe Notes and became Kill Tony. One of my favorite podcasts of all time is still part of the Death Squad podcast network. And then Death Squad also referred to the fans of the podcasts, which fans kind of co-opted it in their own way. A lot of my audience for my old podcast, the Inspired Disorder podcast, came from the Death Squad audience. I was a huge fan of all of the shows and was active in the community talking to people, and a lot of them started their own podcasts. So I was inspired by Redban to start my own podcast network, which was my second attempt at starting a podcast network. But I wanted to it was different. Redban was producing all the shows on his network, and I wasn't producing all of them, but I wanted to bring all of these independent podcast creators together so that we could hopefully promote each other and grow, the rising tide lifts all ships kind of a thing. And I basically was inspired to do the things I did with that network based on things I wish Redban had done with the Death Squad network. Have a website that gave all of the links and all of the info for all the shows. I mean, the Death Squad website was very basically what that was. But a lot of what I did was inspired by Redban and things that I wished he had done with his network. But it was crazy. It was a crazy time. I mean, this was like 2010, 2012, like around those, areas of time where it was probably at its height. Redban was producing all kinds of different shows, and I'm sure that's why it took the delay in releasing the content, because there were so many shows to be produced, even though everything was kind of live to tape, but still understandable. Kill Tony, there's no delay, which is nice. But yeah, the Death Squad network, he had set, first it started in Redban's own house in a spare bedroom, and then later he got a studio space at the Ice House, one of the spare rooms at the Ice House in Pasadena, and turned that into a studio, which for a small time was Joe Rogan's studio for his podcast back when Redban was producing the Joe Rogan Experience. Very cool look to the studio, very dark, a lot of Christmas lights and mannequins and just a lot of things in the background, very similar to like DVD ASA, similar to what I did with the studio, the Inspired Disorder podcast in Denver, where it's just a lot of different things to look at. And it was amazing. It was amazing. The different shows that came from that, it was amazing. That it's still going on, that Kill Tony has grown to what it's grown to. The community, politically and culturally, my experience, at least a lot of the people that I was surrounded by on social media, as it were, part of my community, part of the community of the Inspired Disorder Collective, as well as the Deathsquad, fans. Things change culturally. I don't know if anybody knew, but we got a new leader that kind of opened the floodgates on on trolls to just troll the fuck out, and to be, hate became much more comfortable for people to do, just being assholes to each other. And I didn't want to have a platform where people involved in that would be assholes to each other. And I didn't want people to have a platform to spread their assholeness to other things. So I ended the Inspired Disorder Collective like 2015. It was right when I gave up everything in my life to move to Denver to focus 100% on growing my podcast, on growing the Inspired Disorder Collective. I had lists and notebooks full of ideas of things that I wanted to start executing with the network. And then it just, people felt comfortable just being complete assholes to not just me, but to other people in the network. And, I'm sure the Deathsquad community isn't full of those, but there's definitely a flavor of that. One of which, the classic episode that was part of my success, and it was the an Ice House Chronicles, where a Deathsquad fan, a super fan as it were, was invited to the studios and basically went crazy, tried to steal shit, and people were scared. And he later flipped out on me and flipped out on Redban. Meanwhile, there are still people that protect this guy, that like he may spend money with them, so they like feel the need to like pretend that he's not delusional and destructive. But it is what it is. It is what it is. I'm still doing what I do, and I don't really give a fuck about him or any of the other people really that have kind of just expose themselves as being assholes or being trolls. Like I don't really want to associate with that kind of, whether it's in real life or virtual. Like I don't need that kind of negative energy around me. I don't need vampires around me. I don't need trolls around me. Like people that would give me a fucking like, oh, I really respect your work, but you're fucking doing it wrong. Whatever. I don't know. I got to a point where it's just unfollowing became part of just what I did for sanity purposes, and then later just got rid of social media altogether for a while. But those days in the Deathsquad era were amazing, and I'm glad Redban inspired the Diseasy shirt in his reimagining of his logo for his different shirts in his clothing company. I wanted to do a reimagining of my logo and made the Diseasy logo. So it's like it's very incestuous. It's very like intertwined in the many things of Deathsquad, and I appreciate everybody involved and Redban for making it a reality. It's really cool. It's just, one of those really cool and influential, inspirational things in my life that I'm very thankful for. So thank you, Brian Redban, and everybody that's been a part of the actual Deathsquad network. Not necessarily the Deathsquad fans, just because you have Deathsquad in your Twitter name or hashtag in your profile. I don't know. I'm not blindly friends with you necessarily, but I appreciate you anyway. New episodes of this show come out daily. Subscribe on IGTV and everywhere else podcasts are found. Binge the full week over at patreon.com/Inspired Disorder. InspiredDisorder.com for all of my original artwork, ink paintings you can buy and hang on your wall. At Ray Taylor for me on all social media. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out!